It's time for the Onyx News. Extraterrestrials, time anomalies, dimensions, remote viewing, UFOs, UAPs, and USOs, ghostly encounters, abductions, Bigfoot, and more. Your end of the week news source for everything unexplained. Here is your host for the Onyx News Podcast, Margie K.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Onyx News. I'm your host, Margie K, and we're here on another Friday night with a good show for you. I do want to run over a couple of things before we get started. Okay, I have to remove a stream because it's not working. And, okay, that's gone away. So now we can continue. So we've got Onyx Magazine every month, monthly magazine. If you are a member of the Onyx Network, you get a free digital copy every month. And the membership, we have a free membership. Of course, you can get a paid membership if you want. We have a free membership. You get the digital one for free. So check that out. Just go to onyxnetwork.com, sign up on the front page, and you'll get that. Next, we have some conferences coming up. Now, in a few weeks, we're going to be changing the format of this show. Instead of 1 hour, it's going to be 2 hours. And the second half is called Onyx XL, and my co-host is Race Hobbs. We are going to be doing something called the Conference Connection because there are so many great conferences out there that people need to know about. So tonight, I'm just going to go over 4 real quickly. First of all, Contact at Sea. There are still seats available. This is a cruise from Seattle to Alaska, September 16th to 13th. There are a lot of great speakers on this cruise, but can you imagine being in Alaska with the Northern Lights that might show up, and nightly sky watches, workshops, and seminars for the entire cruise? It is crazy how much stuff is going on. That is going to be a lot of fun. And so check that out. If you go to our website at onyxnetwork.com, you'll see all of these conferences and the links. Next, we have coming up September 28th in the Missouri Ozarks, the 3rd annual Ozark Mountain Bigfoot Conference. Be sure to check that one out. It looks like it's going to be great. And we are actually going to be there with a table. So look us up when you visit that conference. Next, of course, we have XCon. We do still have tickets available for that. That's October 11th to the 13th in Springfield, Missouri. We've got 16 presentations and events going on at this conference, of course, with great speakers. Our keynote is Scott Nelson. Of course, you know, he's the crypto linguist, and he has a fantastic talk on the Ron Moorhead tapes and how he has deciphered that Bigfoot has a language. And of course, we have the banquet and the Mad Hatter costume party. So bring your costume for that. Get your tickets now. And of course, the Arkansas Paranormal Expo. I've been doing this one for several years. It's October 26th and 27th, 2024. With some really great speakers. I know you probably know these guys and gals. Ken Gerhard is going to be speaking about cryptids, of course. Debbie Ziegelmeyer about underwater UFO bases. And there's all kinds of stuff. Again, cryptids, paranormal, UFOs, all combined. Now, my guest this evening is Linda Eastburn. She's been with me before. You may have seen our other interview. She's an author, filmmaker, and intuitive. Her latest book, Threshold to Encounters, comes from years of research in the field of alien, Bigfoot, and ghost experiences. Her other books, With Heart and Writing the Intuitive Wave, are about her life as an intuitive instructor and consultant. Today, she hosts the Linda Eastburn YouTube channel, focusing on creating a platform for others to tell their story. She was host of the television and radio show Anomalies, founded the Midwest Research Society, where she took groups on research trips to explore the paranormal. And of course, she's spoken at conferences and universities all over the U.S. Her films have played from art houses to movie theaters. Welcome to the program, Linda.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Well, I'm so glad you could join me this evening. You are such a busy lady. I don't know how you do it all.
That's all I do. I just stay busy doing this stuff.
Well, it sounds like it. And since we talked last, you have a new book out. So let's just go ahead and start with that. What is it about?
It's really it's divided into two parts. The beginning of it talks about the many explorations of encounters that people have had, mostly with Bigfoot, ghosts, and aliens. And then it correlates some of the similarities between those encounters, because once a person has an encounter, usually they'll have all three, or often they do. So it talks about the person, the individual as well. You can't take the person out of the experience. But then I also have a lot of alternate ideas, theories, and ideas about what might really be happening in these situations. Over the years, and I know you can relate with this, but over the years, since I've been doing this since 1990, I have heard so many stories, and so many things, point to there could be some other things involved here, whether it be technology. Some forms of technology may be invested in this. In even our own technology could be invested in this. There are other kind of mind control and secret organizations that may have some influence over people's experiences. So I put those in there as well to give people kind of a counter idea of some reasons why they may be experiencing what they're experiencing. So it's all kind of included in the book. It encompasses a great deal of information. Plus, I get into a little bit of remote viewing and some of my intuitive work, and some of the things that, as an intuitive, you tend to stumble into a lot of things, and that takes you down this line of research. And as I've done so, I found that there are a lot of things within the mind and the intuitive capacity that I also include in the book.
When did you first realize that you were an intuitive?
I did not come about this naturally. I wasn't like I was born having a lot of experiences. I was really a left brain person. It was when I was almost 40 when I started focusing on meditation and getting these impressions. I just kept having this obsession with Einstein for some reason. And I didn't know why. I had no idea why, because I'd never been a science person before. But I had this obsession with Einstein, and I started reading and studying. And then I took some courses in meditation and focus and concentration. And I wouldn't say those specifically taught me how to be intuitive, but they certainly gave me the discipline to be able to move into those intuitive states and be able to hold my focus there and get information. Now, I also became a hypnotherapist back in, around 92 or so. And that just added to the picture. With hypnosis, I had yet one more tool under my belt to be able to go in and explore. And I not only taught people how to be hypnotherapist, I did the work myself, but I had a partner that would take me into these deep intuitive states, because I was looking to reach a state kind of like the Edgar Cayce method, of getting information that was intensely accurate. So I worked really hard for about 6 years before I ever stepped out and, hung my shingle out that I was going to charge any kind of money at doing this. I did a lot of free sessions, a lot of sessions just practicing. And then there was kind of these pivotal moments when I realized this is really pretty accurate. I remember being at a UFO conference, and it was the first time I'd heard the term remote viewing. At this conference, there was a man that had gone to, I believe it was Russia, and he had interviewed some people that said that they had done remote viewing for their government. Now, this was kind of a new idea, because most of my intuitive work or intuitive ideas really revolved more around just a spiritual kind of process. Never had I ever considered this something that you could do as a spying technique and look at submarines or military bases or anything like that. So this was it was kind of inspiring, but also it was kind of it just took me down a whole different way of thinking about this, because it wasn't in the norm of what I normally did. So I came home from this conference, And I'm thinking, well, I don't have a hypnotist with me to take me under, but I knew I could go under by myself. So I thought, well, how am I going to do this? How am I going to look at something that's physical like that? That's, that doesn't have a human being involved with it. So I decided this was the old days before cell phones. This was way
Mhm.
in the early 90s. And so I pulled out a telephone book. And if it had a phone number at a residential address, I'm assuming there's a house there, right? So I was a little bit front loaded in that I knew I would be looking at a house. But what I wanted to do was stand in like as if I were in the middle of the road, looking straight at the front of the house and describe everything I could about it. The color
Mhm.
of the roof, the style of the house, the windows, garage, whatever might be there, shrubs, whatever I could describe, just describe it. But it was my first effort. So I was a little shaky, didn't know for sure what I was doing. But I went into the house number, just stated the address and put myself in a hypnotic state. And immediately I saw this baby blue colored house. And in those days, baby blue houses were not that popular. You didn't see them very often. But I saw this baby blue colored house, and every part of my being was saying, that's not it. That's, abort, don't go
So
there.
your left brain was kicking in.
Right. Well, I think it was my intuition kicking in, as the story
Oh,
goes. But I thought, okay, okay, I'm just going to trust that. I'm just going to throw that baby blue house to the side and go back into the address of the home. And as I did, I came up into the house. I wasn't in the middle of the road at all. I was just right at the siding of the house. I was looking at it just right there close. I could see the runs in the paint, and I saw it as I think I saw it as white. And then as I backed up from it and could see the full view of the house, the roof was black. It was, I saw a 1-car garage on the right side of the house. I saw a picture window. I saw a tiny little sidewalk and a little bitty porch. And it had that, you remember when people used to put that old green grass stuff on their porches,
yes.
it had that on the porch. There was a metal post, which was also common in those ranch style houses with the 1-car garage,
Mhm.
picture window, and there was one tree very well placed in the front of the house, and something that I saw had like a little kind of crescent moon on it, maybe a birdhouse or something, but I didn't know for sure what that was. So later that day, I drove by the address, and right next door was the baby blue house. So I was
Oh.
a baby blue house caught my attention apparently, but I knew it was wrong. So I brought my attention
Yeah.
back to the actual house I was remote viewing. I got 2 things wrong on that first effort to do remote viewing. One was I transposed the garage. It was on the left instead of the right. And
Mm.
the other is the paint was a really, really pale gray instead of white. Every single thing else that I saw was correct. So I set out to do that several of those a week and then go drive by at some point and see if I got it correct. And I became kind of, it's like I felt like it wasn't challenging enough because they were houses and I knew they were houses and there were only so many colors of roofs and size of houses and styles of houses. So I decided to challenge myself by every time I was in the session to ask myself, okay, find one distinctive item at this house that separates it from any other house so I know for sure I'm at the right place. And I started seeing things like, okay, there's a barrel on the left side back by a fence, or there's a blue tarped boat in the backyard on the right side, or there's a twirling ornament in the yard, or something like that. And
Mhm.
once I even saw a driveway. I thought it was a sidewalk because it came in the very front of the house and then it turned and it went around to the side of the house. I thought, well, that must be a sidewalk. It ended up being the driveway. That was very, very odd because it was a small lot. It really shouldn't have been there, but it was. So I would drive by and I was really accurate, but I found I was either like spot on accurate or I was completely off. It was just like, it was one or the other. But I had about an 85% success rate in seeing those houses correctly. So that sort of gave me some really solid foundation to know that I could see these things and I was seeing them
Mhm.
fairly accurately. And that's a method I teach today is, helping people to be able to differentiate between a, a supposed intuitive impression and a non-supposed intuitive impression. But I went on to become a health intuitive, and that was kind of important. I can't diagnose anything, of course. I'm not a medical doctor, and I don't even get close to that. But I realized that if I can see those houses that clearly, probably I can see things inside the physical body. And that one's
Mhm.
been proven over and over and over again, where people do not know they have cancer in their neck, and then I see it, and I don't ever tell them they have cancer. I just tell them they should have that checked out. And when they do, it's there,
Mhm.
things like that. So, but yeah, that's how I got started. Lots and lots of work, lots and lots of verifying if it was accurate or not, since I didn't have those first 40 years to trust that it was. I had to prove it to myself and develop the skill. And so I can teach that to people today that perhaps have never had an intuitive impression, because I hadn't, and I certainly made it there. So it can be done, as you know.
Yeah. We have a lot in common. Let's just
We
leave it
do.
at that.
We really do. Yeah.
Yeah. Um, so as far as the paranormal goes, how did you get interested in that? Did you have an experience? Did something happen to you when you were a kid?
Again, no. There was a there was a flap of UFO activity that came over an area where I live
Mm,
in the about 1989, 1990, and there was a MUFON group that formed here in my local town, Springfield, Missouri. I started going to that, and I really didn't know what to expect. I'd never been a part of anything of that nature at all. But I found I just really enjoyed the people. I enjoyed the presentations. It was just a fascinating subject, and I like unusual things like that anyway. So I met the people. I was working as a hypnotherapist at the time, and the leader of that, the head of that, he was doing hypnotic regressions at that time. That was kind of the heyday of a lot of people having regressions if they felt
mhm,
like they had been abducted or something. So with that, he had a lot on his plate, trying to work full time, and then work with the abductees as well with regressions. So he pushed people over my way to do a lot of those regressions that he didn't have time for. So I got a lesson early on in that research. I will never forget the very first one that I did. I had no idea how terrifying that could be, both for the person under hypnosis as well as me, who was not accustomed to that. I was
mm,
working with regular regressions, maybe past life regressions. I was helping people, lose weight, concentration, that sort of thing, but nothing that was as intense and as scary for some of these people as
mhm,
the abductions were. So that was kind of my initiation into that, and then I continued on doing regressions with people, and still to this day do regressions for people. That kind of led me into starting the Midwest Research Society. Once the local UFO group stopped having meetings, I started my own meeting, and then we traveled all over the country doing UFO research and talking to people that had encounters, taking reports, and just invested myself highly in that world of UFOs. And paranormal sort of came with that.
mhm.
I started going to not as much as the UFOs, but the paranormal just kind of goes hand in hand with it. So I was doing a TV show at the time called Anomalies, and then later did a radio show of the same name. It wasn't an internet radio show; it was a regular radio show, but we were broadcast worldwide through the internet. And we would go to sites, haunted places, and do research at the places, and then report that back either on the show or have the people on the show. So
Mhm.
all of that just kind of took place all through the 90s and the early 2000s. And then I started traveling the country with my intuitive work, and that really took a lot of my time. So even though I was still vested and interested in the rest of it, I didn't get to do the research as wholeheartedly as I had before.
Mhm. When you were, uh, when you were doing hypnosis work with other individuals and doing regressions, does any particular case stand out to you that would have been, say, an abduction experience, or someone who had multiple experiences, and, different, experiences with, say, poltergeist activity and ETs and cryptids? Does anything stand out?
Yeah, there was this one lady that I was working with, and oddly enough, our birthdays were the same day. That's just an odd story, but this was kind of a really odd thing that happened overall. She would come about once a week for a regression, and we were really exploring some of the unusual things that were happening to her. In her home, she would wake up in the middle of the night. Her animals would be just going nuts, and she could see a light coming down the hall. She knew that aliens and beings were going to come yet again and, and abduct her. So that was something that was happening to her. Her house would often have just kind of ghost-like activities a lot. And she'd experienced this sort of thing all of her life. So we were exploring a lot of that kind of situation that she was going through. Her abduction cases, she could not get to a lot of that deeper part of herself that could remember a lot of what happened during her abductions, but she could remember, she would go into great detail about the things that would happen beforehand, and then she would remember coming back. But somehow she just had that blocked that she could not get to those places where, during the actual abduction. But her animals, I mean, they would just like go nuts about, a few times a year. It wasn't a regular occurrence, but it was often enough that she knew that this was kind of an odd thing. Now, the really weird thing that happened once, I was practicing my own intuitive skills, and because I wasn't really naturally good at this was before I did the remote viewing and that sort of thing. I just wasn't really well versed in the intuitive work yet. But as I was talking to her, suddenly this Irish voice comes through me, and it's like I couldn't have done that if I tried, But that same Irish voice was one that I would often hear when I was in my intuitive work. I would ask a question, listen for an answer, and there was this male Irish voice that would come back. And every time I heard that male Irish voice, it was always very accurate information. So I thought that was just really odd that I start speaking with this Irish accent suddenly.
Wow.
It was the one and only time that happened. But it was startling enough. She noticed it. I noticed it. Eventually, I mentioned it. And she said, "Oh, thank God." She thought she was going nuts because she was hearing me, my voice completely changed,
Oh, wow.
something shifted. And when that happened, I'm thinking, okay, that's really odd because nothing like this ever happened before. So it was late. She left. And I'm thinking, well, I can sit here and meditate, try to figure out what, or ask, what that was about, what happened. Or I can just go to bed, snuggle up next to my husband and forget about it tonight and look at it tomorrow, which is what I chose to do. Just go to sleep and let it, rest on it. So the next day I was meditating on that. And clearly the message that came back intuitively was, this was my main guide. And my main guide, this is the wording. There was trafficking going on, and probably because of her experiences, not mine. But there was trafficking going on, and this main guide entered my receptors, so nothing else could enter. Okay, so I'm thinking, yeah, well, maybe it's one of those things that's like that seems a little far fetched, but okay, I'll buy it for now. But that night I had a group of people at my house, and this was just so interesting. There was actually the young man who was in college was my hypnotherapist, or not my hypnotherapist, my hypnotist that would me into those deep levels for hours and hours. And he came to the house that night. We had a little group meeting, and he said at college that day he was in the school library, and he was looking through some of the spiritual, metaphysical section of the library. And he found this really old book, like from 1946 or something. And he pulled it out. And the name of the book, listen to this, was Trafficking with Spirits.
Oh.
Very same night that voice had come in. So that was kind of a full circle moment. It's kind of an answer to my questions. Like, okay, this is a term, but it's not a term I had ever heard of before. Wasn't a term that he had ever heard of before. And here is this book, just when I get this intuitively that day about what had happened to me the night before. So that was kind of an initiation.
Synchronicity there, big time.
Oh, yeah. Yes.
All right. Well, we are up on a break, and when we come back, we'll talk more with Linda Eastburn. Be right back.
The Onyx Network presents a health and wellness spiritually based brand of hemp-derived CBD products made by Hopewell Farm in Harrogate, Tennessee. We apply our Cathara energy work with all of our plants and products. Our products made in small batches with only 2 ingredients of pure hemp, full spectrum crude oil, and coconut-derived MCT oil. Third-party lab tested for potency and legal THC levels with 6 strengths of 1 ounce oil to choose from. Know what you're buying and get what you pay for from Hopewell Farm. Applied directly to a specific area, Hopewell Farm topical salve in 1 ounce and ½ ounce sizes made with pure hemp crude oil, comfrey extract, and all natural ingredients. Find the Hopewell Farm link and coupon code on the Onyx Network website at onyxnetwork.com. That's onyxnetwork.com. This September 6th through the 13th, join with like-minded souls in the experience of a lifetime on the Royal Caribbean Ovation of the Seas as we travel from Seattle to Alaska. Internationally renowned researchers, investigators, experiencers, authors, holistic healers, contactees, spiritual luminaries will sail on an extraordinary voyage of transformation. This cruise will explore UFOs, alien contact, cover-ups, ancient mysteries, the paranormal, holistic healing, and spirituality. Experience engaging lectures, one-on-one sessions, private, custom-tailored excursions, and a nightly UFO watch. The cruise is booking up fast. Go to contactatsea.com and be sure to mention the Onyx Network when you book. That's contactatsea.com or phone 336-749-1219. That's 336-749-1219.
The Onyx Network annual XCon is just around the corner, so get your tickets now. XCon is being held October 11th to the 13th, 2024 at the very haunted Oasis Hotel and Convention Center in Springfield, Missouri. Speakers include Scott Nelson, Peter Robbins, Micah Hanks, Mindy Taubfest, Debbie Ziegelmeyer, Dan Terry, Michelle Roos, and more, presenting UFOs, cryptids, and the paranormal. Attend a live ghost hunt and workshops at the hotel, and we're having the annual awards banquet and Mad Hatter costume party. You don't want to miss this conference. Visit unxnetwork.com to register today. That's unxnetwork.com. And we're back with the next news. And my guest this evening is Linda Eastburn. We are talking about all kinds of cool things. I did have a comment that I'm going to read. A question from Justin. Linda, it sounds like you mostly focus on regression, but if you have any psychic intuitive, have you ever tried to contact inanimate objects such as trees, rocks, water, and animals?
Mm-hmm. I have. I've explored almost everything that you could possibly explore with my intuition and looking at those things in the spirit of it. And so, yes.
Yes. Okay. As have I. So I do understand that. Let's talk about trees for a minute.
Okay.
Do they have a consciousness?
I think trees are very, very conscious. And, the really interesting thing, when I started doing the Bigfoot interviews, I really didn't know much about Bigfoot. That was one of the things in the paranormal field that I didn't know anything about. But as I continued to do these interviews, I kept hearing these things, that they move back into nature and they kind of disappear in the woods. And I looked at that a little intuitively. And, I honestly believe that the trees have a spirit. And I believe that Bigfoot may be part of that nature spirit of trees. I think everything has is part of a conscious network. And I think, trees, plants, rocks, even earth, dirt, everything has a consciousness about it. And someone, it's not conscious like in that it could maybe talk directly to us the way we can communicate with one another. It's not conscious in that respect, but it's aware and conscious to the degree that it can remain a rock can remain a rock until it breaks down into being sand or dirt or whatever it breaks down to. I mean, it has a sense of consciousness about it. I think everything does.
It's interesting what you mentioned about Bigfoot and the trees, because I know there have been a number of people who have seen cryptids, Sasquatch, walk into a tree as if there is nothing solid there, they just walk into it. And so I have the opinion that trees can be portals. Perhaps they're interdimensional portals. What are your thoughts on that?
I think they could be. I haven't heard. Well, actually, I did interview one person that they actually watched a Bigfoot come out of a tree, and like this. A portion of this tree took on a very unusual look, almost like an energy within the tree itself. Just a very, very unusual look. And from that, there was, a Bigfoot could enter and exit from that portal. And he referred to it as a portal. He would see it form and he would see it disappear. So yeah, I think that's very, very likely. I'm not sure if every tree has that capacity, but certainly I think some of them do.
Mm-hmm. Indeed. So you're going to be doing a talk at XCon coming up here in October. Just tell us a little bit about your subject matter for that.
Well, it's going to be a lot like my book. It's going to be the connections between Bigfoot, ghost, and aliens. Because in all the years that I've been researching this, and now Bigfoot's added to that picture, I see a lot of correlations about the experiences itself, from the location that things are happening. That if you see a UFO, you see a Bigfoot there, you see some paranormal activity that happens, ghost activity maybe happening in a location. Mm-hmm. So it seems to be tied in some way to that potentially, but it also seems to be tied to a person. So I will be going into the detail of what I see as the individuals who have more of these experiences and some of the qualities that form around them and why maybe they do have some of those experiences. But I'm also going to introduce this one case that I don't think anyone's heard of, because I don't think anyone knows about it. It's one that I've known of for a while, and I've slowly through the years gathered information on it. I just call it Case 841. It's the only UFO experience I have personally happened in this area. But this happened some time back. But it was, I was at a person's house sitting in an automobile waiting for my husband. He was in the garage with his friend. And I'm sitting there in the driveway about 10 o'clock at night looking over a pasture. This is way out in the country. Gravel road, no other houses around, no lights around, nothing. And I'm looking across this pasture, and there's a tree line on the other side of it. It's quite a distance over there. And I see this orange light that's just above the trees. And at first I'm thinking, well, maybe that's an airplane that's going to, go on over. But it didn't move. And I watched it for maybe 10, 15 minutes, something like that. And I'm just sitting there with nothing else to do. So I'm just observing this orange light until it finally just slowly goes down behind that group of trees. And I didn't think that much about it, but I did go back and talk to the MUFON group the next time I was there and explain that to them. And they said, well, orange lights sometimes are related to animal mutilations. Well, a few days after, it was probably 2 days, maybe even the next day after I saw that orange light, I went to some people's house for Sunday noon meal. And they started talking about some friends of theirs that lived on one of those farms next to that pasture that I was looking at, had a cow mutilated the night before, that same night that I saw the orange light. And it wasn't just them, but it was also in that pasture where I was looking, and also the farm to the left, farm to the right. So there were 3 cows mutilated. Possibly even it was happening as I was looking at it, but I couldn't tell you the exact timing of that. But no one would have known that, because no one was talking about it.
Right.
The farmers did tell it to call the sheriff. Sheriff comes out, they just chalk it up as some kind of occult activity or whatever. But since I saw that orange light at the very same time that these animal mutilations, or at least the same night that the animal mutilations happened, I can't help but believe that there was some kind of correlation there between them.
Yeah.
So this case 841, that is the only case that I personally have experienced. But there are numerous Bigfoot sightings. There are craft that's been seen, very unusual anomalies of lights, very, very odd light activity. There's a haunted woods that's there. There was, whether it be urban legend or not, there's a person that was, they'd only found their hand in a car in this woods. And since then, it's had the reputation of being a haunted woods. People disappear in that area. People tend to just move out. There are a few homes built in this big, large acreage of woods, but people tend to just vacate the houses and they just move. They don't stay there. There's also a Masonic lodge right in the middle of this whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
There are voices that are heard at this park. There's, a disembodied voice that you can hear at this park. Several people have heard that. There's craft landing on property. There's craft, going over roads. There again, this is strung out over some period of time, but I'm going to be presenting that case at the conference in detail.
No, that sounds fantastic for those of us who like that sort of thing, and there are a lot of us. The Springfield area, the Ozarks area, there's a lot of paranormal activity going on there, and probably as far back as anybody can remember. It seems to be a major paranormal hotspot. Do you think that, well, first of all, is that true? And from what you just said, it sounds like it certainly is. And why do you think certain people are attracted to that area? I mean, I have a very strong pull to want to be there. And that's one of the reasons we have XCon there. Why do you think that is?
Well, I think there's probably a combination of things. One of the things I notice is whether they be conservative spiritual groups or whether they be out on a limb spiritual groups, they seem to migrate to this place to have their headquarters. This is just really odd to me. But I think there is some kind of a vortex here that somehow, anchors it in, and that could be a physical thing here, or it could just be that over years, there's been so much spiritual energy that has been drawn here just from the mere use of all of these spiritual headquarters being here, and it's diverse. It's, metaphysical things and UFO things and conservative religious groups. I mean, it doesn't matter what it is, but it's still very, very spiritual. It just has this very, very unusual ability. And of course, we're not that far from the Joplin spook light either. And
Right.
And we have numerous caves here. We have waterways underground here. We have a really super cave system here. We even have an area here that is a fallout system that is designated for presidents. Literally, if something happens, this is one of the places they can go and be safe. So we have just kind of a really unusual sort of creative spirit here. And you wouldn't know it by just being in the city by itself because, it's just a normal city. But if you get to know the underground part of the city, it is truly has a lot of spiritual anomalies about it.
It sure does. I lived in Springfield for a while, and when I was a teenager, and to this day, the house we lived in, after all the houses I've investigated, paranormal investigations, that is the most haunted house I've ever been in. And it is still haunted today because I've gone back several times to check, and there's still nobody living there. It's always vacant, and there is a ghost that appears. Like a solid person.
I've heard that over and over. And I did own a haunted house here in Springfield. It was a very short period of time. And a woman had supposedly committed suicide in the attic of the house. I don't know if that would have caused the haunting of it, but very strange things happening in that home. But that's the only place that I've ever owned that was that haunted. I've been places, I've known of ghost in houses I live, but not to that degree.
Mm-hmm. Well, I can tell we need to do some more talking after the show. And maybe some visiting of certain places. There's a lot going on there in that area. And I wonder too if there's something that's just popping in my head about trees being twisted.
Mhm.
And so I'm wondering why I'm seeing that right now. Is that something that
Well,
you've looked into?
I've looked a little bit into that, of what causes a tree to bend or grow in a twisted manner.
Mhm.
And I think there's some kind of electromagnetic, anomaly that probably influences that. And I haven't really measured that at a site of a tree like that, but I do see them quite often. Yeah.
Yeah, it almost, makes me feel like there's a vortex,
Hmm. Yeah.
and, so I'm I wonder if there are a lot of those in Springfield. Now we're gonna have to check that out.
There's one just down the street from me, actually, that
Ah,
it is a very odd shape. Yeah.
uh-huh, uh-huh, that's weird. And the area around Drury College
Mhm.
also seems to be it's very old there, and there was also a Civil War battle in Springfield, wasn't there?
Yeah, the Civil War, it was here, but also in Battlefield, which is just south of here, I've been a bigger part of the Civil War. But there were several battles all around here, but mostly the battle that happened at Battlefield, it was named for the battle, is the most prominent one, and now it's a complete park that they have designated to be able to honor that particular
Mhm.
Civil War battle. Mhm.
Have you ever investigated that site?
I haven't. That would be a really good one to investigate, but no, I haven't done that at that location.
My wheels are turning about doing that next year for
Mhm.
XCon, having a field trip to that park because obviously be open to the public.
Mhm.
And, yeah, that would be interesting. As I
Yeah, it
know,
is.
of course, anytime you have a battle, uh, people are gonna die, and there's gonna be some residual energy there.
For sure. And also, Bonnie and Clyde came through here. There was a lot of
Yeah.
activity with Bonnie and Clyde in various places. They kidnapped a police officer here. They had a shootout and had to escape from Walnut Street here and headed south to Reed Spring and had a big shootout down there as well.
Mhm.
A lot of criminals came through Springfield.
Yeah. Yeah, I've heard the history of that, yes. There was a lot and Joplin as well.
Yeah.
Big time. Big time scary stuff. Okay, do you have any plans for we've got your, this other book that I just wanted to mention, Writing the Intuitive Wave. Tell us about that.
Well, it's the first book I wrote, and it really is kind of my journey into becoming intuitive. And and it has a little lesson plan in the back if anyone wants to practice some of the exercises that I did to become more intuitive. Has a little
Mhm.
bit of my philosophy about what's happening, and it was a naive time as far as from then to now as to what I know now. But it's a really good starting point to begin to. It's a good initiation book if you're just getting started in the intuitive field and learning more about that. But also it gives my background, so I get real personal about how I became intuitive and the various synchronicities that happened and how I opened up to that. And it took a while, when you're starting from scratch, you're 40 years old. It takes a while. You have to really pay attention to those signals and listen and work your way through that. So I give people hope that they can do it as well.
Well, and you certainly can at any age.
Yeah.
I've heard about people who are 80 years old and just wake up,
Hmm.
and that they want to know everything at that point and start doing that. What's the name of your 3rd book?
The third book is With Heart. And it's probably it's more true to probably my the science behind this, and my philosophy behind this. It gets it's a much deeper read, but I also reference a lot of other studies and work that people know. And also, maybe it's also most of my work is very hopeful. It's like I like
Mhm.
to help people understand how this can really benefit their world, their life, and it can. It most definitely has mine and other people that I teach as well. But it helps you to understand how how this works, how your heart is just as important as your head, with the intuitive work, because you'll feel it. And my heart is my monitor. Because when I do most of my work speaking out loud, and as I speak, I listen to my voice and I listen to the words I'm saying, and my heart then tells me if it's true or not. And so that is something that I monitor everything with my heart space, because it will tell me, it's like, no, that's not right. No, reword that. You need to go back and reword that, because you need to get a more truthful alignment with what you're trying to say there. So it goes into how the heart plays into the whole intuitive process. But also, these Tibetan monks found that they could go into this very hyper state. And writing the intuitive wave is about learning how to get into this state where you cannot get the words out fast enough because the information is coming in so quickly. And these Tibetan monks found that when they incorporated compassion from their heart with their intuitive impression, with their intuitive work that they were doing, what they found is they could get into this hyper state, and it just like it flows. And so that's riding the intuitive wave. If you imagine surfing, you get on this wave and you just ride it in. It's not your energy. You found that energy flow, and the information is just present. And once you catch that, and that's usually what I would try to teach my students, is that if you can catch that wave, you've got it made. All that information is just going to be super accurate.
Very interesting. How can people get a hold of your books?
Just get in touch with me. You can just email me is probably the best way. And that's just lindaeastburn@gmail.com.
Okay. And they can also get you through your Facebook groups, probably send you a message.
Absolutely. And then, of course, you can order Threshold to Encounters through Amazon.com.
Well, let's talk about your Facebook groups for a minute. How about the Bigfoot Cryptid Midwest? Obviously, you're talking about Bigfoot. Do you get a lot of people post their sightings on there? And do you get any good photos?
Not very many, a few. It's more of an interactive group that posts other YouTube videos, or places you can see this or that. But not as many pictures as I would like, but some. The group tends to interact with one another quite a bit. And a lot of the people have been on my show, so I know them, they know me. And they usually know one another. There's about 5,000 people that contribute to that site. So come and join the Bigfoot Cryptid Midwest, because you'll always know what I'm doing, because I always post all of my things there. And I've been posting this conference coming up in October, so you can definitely see all of that information as well. Anything that's going on in the community or around the country really dealing with Bigfoot will be on there.
Well, I am a member of that, and it's really good. I highly recommend it. So go. And then we have UFO, aliens, ghosts for real.
Yeah, that's kind of an offshoot of the Bigfoot. My Bigfoot people they're just really hardcore Bigfoot people. So I didn't want to stick all of my interest in the UFO, the paranormal, the ghost, because that's a lot of my interest too. So I was doing some interviews from that informational pit. So I decided to create a different place where I could put my stuff out, and we could talk about those things. So then I kind of separated those two. A lot of people just really can't get away from Bigfoot just being a flesh and blood character, and they're hardcore researchers out there in the field, and that's all they really want to talk about. Now, some of those Bigfoot people have made it over to the ghost, paranormal, alien, because they're interested in all of it, like me. So they do intersect, but I have those two groups that on Facebook that people can come and join.
I think it's interesting that some people are very narrowly focused on one thing, like cryptids, or some might just be Bigfoot, and they're don't care about the other cryptids. But and then there are groups that are UFO only, ghosts only. But in my experience, I find that these things are related, and you mentioned that earlier, that you feel the same way. In what way are these things all related?
Well, like I said, oftentimes it's by location that you just stumble into. It's like, well, this area, all of these things are being seen in this area. What is it about this area that causes that. But also, some people have seen craft and, Bigfoot coming out of a craft, a UFO. And, well, you can't deny that's some kind of a correlation. I did an interview the other day with a man who he was up on a hillside with 2 other guys, and there were 12 pair of eye shine down below. And it was an area that he knew Bigfoot was around that area. They'd actually just gone out to look for Bigfoot that night. So they're sitting there watching these 12 pair of eye shine, and suddenly from the right, there's this UFO, this light. It was dark out. There was this light that comes swooping in from the right, goes way down into this valley below this, and they could see this glowing light down there. All 12 pair of eye shine turn around. They could hear them running as fast as they could down to meet up with this UFO. So another time that, it's another one of those moments of, well, there must be some kind of a correlation between Bigfoot and UFOs.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah, I've got a few reports, but nothing that dramatic.
It's pretty amazing.
That's pretty awesome. Have you ever seen a Bigfoot?
I have not. Now, when we made the film Byways of Bigfoot, we went along a river that I knew there had been sightings in that area. And we went to several locations and to do the research. And I honestly thought, we'd go out there, we'd look, we'd talk about the sightings that had happened there. There was one piece of private property we filmed on that he had heard vocals in the spring and fall, but he hadn't really seen any evidence. We went out. Every time we went out, there were tracks, there were trackways, there were, trees that had been twisted and broken off that right beside a track. And, things that I wasn't expecting to see. And no one knew we were going there, so no one was hoaxing it. I mean, no one knew we were going there except me. And so that was an interesting thing, just to see the evidence of Bigfoot was something. Now, on the private property, since we made that film, there was a lot more things. We left some shiny things there. We left boxes that were difficult to open. Those now have been opened. The shiny things are scattered about. Some of them were taken. So something had to get into that. It could not be any other critter, because you had to have a thumb. You had to be able to open that box. And now, so I think there's more activity there since we filmed than there was when we were filming even.
How many films have you made?
I have made several films. There, 2 of them are on the more prominent ones. The one that toured one's about a cancer survivor. It's called Amy's Prayer, and the other is about a World War II veteran called Encounter with the Enemy. So both of those are on my YouTube channel, but they're under a different playlist of documentaries. And then the Byways of Bigfoot, I would consider it to be a documentary of the Niagara River where we filmed. When I first started, because I love to make film, my YouTube channel has sort of just turned into more of a podcast style, because I can interview more people like this, on the internet, than to go out with cameras and a crew and film. It's also less expensive for me to do that. But I love making film. So I did make one called the Bigfoot The Limits, and it was more of a documentary type of film on location than the others, and that's on my channel too as well.
Oh my! So, and people can watch those for free on your channel.
They're on there now. Yes.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing. Well, that's fantastic. Thank you so much for being on the program with me this evening.
Well, thank you. Yes.
I appreciate it, and I'm really looking forward to your talk and your workshop at XCon. Yes. What is your workshop going to be about, real quick?
It's about mind speak. So, I'm only have an hour, so it's going to be a short version of becoming more intuitive and being able to, if you have a desire to do mind speak with any cryptid, aliens, UFOs, Bigfoot, whatever, to give you some pointers and some ability to start practicing that, to be able to get in touch with these various cryptids.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Linda. I will be seeing you soon.
Thank you.
All right. Well, that wraps it up for another episode of UNX News. We will be back here again next Friday night at 6 p.m.